Hey, this is John with Two Moose Home Inspections, and welcome to the January 2021 in-service training. All right, before we dive into it, let's just get started by saying what this is. Again, this is our in-service training. We do these monthly. We will meet with our inspectors, and then we'll also discuss everything we discussed in this video, along with some additional training and other activities like that. This past month, Shay and I, my other inspector, Shay, we did a little bit of sonde locating, which is whenever we do a sewer scope, you need to be able to locate where that sewer line is. And so we have some very nice equipment to be able to do so. And thankfully, because of a little bit of snow, we were able to throw that sonde deep into the snow and go and locate it. So we definitely honed our skills quite a bit. And I think that we are definitely ready for the new season and ready to rock and roll with sewer scoping, both myself and Shay. So if we move in, let's go ahead and we're going to take a look right now at Notion. And this is where we keep all of our information about our company. We're going to scroll down here to the 2021 in-service training. And we're going to click on the January 2021 in-service training. So basically, what I want to say as far as updates are concerned, I'm currently working on a brand new template. And so what that means is that whenever we write our inspections, we basically have a template that we work off of. And that template allows us that instead of having to type every single time that we want to say that there's a leak underneath the sink, or every time we want to say that the carpet needs cleaning, instead of having to type that every time, we have a checkbox basically that we're able to check, and it says, okay, put this in. And then we can add pictures and other important information. And so right now, our current template has just about 1,500 deficiencies that we could find. And so it is a good, template that I've worked on, but we've basically now needed it to grow even further because our objective is that come March 1st, we want to be completely in the field making our inspection reports. I believe that we've had enough insight and enough number of inspections that we're now able to transition to an in-field report writing. And so our software, I'm currently working on updating everything. The expectation is that we'll have about 4 times as many deficiencies to choose from. And so then that way, whenever we go into a house and we say, oh, the temperature pressure relief valve needs to be 6 inches off of the ground, or there's more than a 3/8 inch of a difference between the stairs, that information is already in there. We can just select what the deficiency is, and then we can take photos and add other pieces of information to that. So that way the report can be done and ready for the buyer right then and there whenever the report is over. Additionally, we'll have to add other things like our 360-degree photos and our thermal imaging, and we'll do that after the fact. But it'll save our inspectors a bunch of time and also make sure that whenever we have a buyer who has a very, very short deadline, that we can get them all the information they need before the end of their inspection objection deadline. So that's what we're transitioning towards, and that's what we're working on. And so basically then what we have is that we are also, as far as reports are concerned, our radon reports and our water testing reports, instead of having to type a whole narrative, that's all already in the report. So what we're doing is we're transitioning that. We'll just be uploading those files. So we'll write the whole report, and then those files will be uploaded as an attachment. And then you can view those attachments again on your cell phone, on your computer, whatever format works best for you. And that will also save our inspectors a little bit of time, removing a little bit of redundancy that if the radon report already says that we're above 4.0 pictocuries per liter, that the recommendation is to then have a radon mitigation system installed. And so by having that in the report, there's no reason to then have the inspector go back and update the report. So we have that stored just as an attachment, which is saving our inspectors a lot of time, which then means that we can do more inspections, we can take care of more customers. So let's dive right into some of the issues that we found, and we're just going to go through this. And again, this is a training specifically for our inspectors, but also I think that if you find information of this helpful, if there's something you didn't know about your house that you didn't realize was an issue that should be resolved, now you have that little bit of information. And I think that that is very, very valuable. So first things first, this one right here. So heating, pH concentrate neutralizer not present. So basically, whenever you have a high efficiency heating system, the condensation comes out, and the condensation is going to be not neutral. So it's more than likely going to be a little bit too acidic, and we don't want to damage anything in our septic system, our pipes, or anything at the water treatment plant. So you put in a neutralizer and you replace the neutralizing pellets, once a year or whatever it may be. And that is really all you need to do. It's a very inexpensive fix, something that can be done very, very well. So this right here is more or less just bad workmanship. I mean, really, they should have encased this or made it look a little bit better. And the electrical conduit is exposed, and it just shows like a lack of how do I want to put this? Just poor craftsmanship. And is there anything wrong with it? Well, with some of these things that we're going to go through today, no, there's really nothing wrong with it, but it could have been, better. It could have been done better, because now a lot of the people that are in our area are renting their properties. And whenever they're renting the properties, what happens is that we have people that are coming in to enjoy some skiing in the mountains. And whenever they see this, they say, oh, well, that's not quite what I want. So if you're somebody who's renting on Airbnb or VRBO, then yeah, you're going to have to pay somebody a little bit of money to be able to cover up that conduit. So that way it looks perfect for these people having their vacation, their dream vacation experience. And so things like this are called out because it's going to cost you money to make it the way that you're going to need it. So next would be this GFCI. So this GFCI tripped, and it tripped at 366 milliseconds. And really anything beyond 200 milliseconds is less than ideal. And normally you can take a look at some of these and you can say, oh, wow, that looks really old. Like that particular GFCI right there looks a little bit old. And so right then and there, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to test this a different way. What's really interesting is I know it's 200 milliseconds, but whenever you test enough GFCI receptacles and you press that button, you can actually start to sense, wow, that took a long time. And you can almost guess that was faster or slower than 200 milliseconds. And in fact, you can even feel a difference between a 40 millisecond pressing of the button versus like 120 millisecond, where sometimes you'll say, whoa, that 120 millisecond, that seemed really slow. It's still acceptable, but it's just interesting as you interact with homes a little bit more, how that kind of stuff just works out. So next right here, so the steam system not functioning. There's a lot of steam shower, steam systems in our area. And basically, you really need to be cautious because one, steam obviously is high pressure water vapor. And so if the system is not in good working order, the system could become a risk, a safety risk for you and your family. Then also, because that is normally heated by electric, you want to make sure the electric connections and everything are done correctly, because if not, then that could run into an electrocution hazard. And overall, there's just a lot that needs to be done to make sure the system is clean and healthy for use. We don't go into all the testing of steam systems. We pretty much just test. We press the button. Did it work? Did it turn on? Did everything do what it was supposed to do? Yes. But we don't go in and collect the steam sample and check for bacteria and this and that. But if you run the steam system enough, it should burn off any kind of bacterial or other type of issue that you may have. But there's also maintenance that needs to be done to these steam systems from time to time, just so you are aware. So this one right here, plumbing drains. So basically we have a leaking waste pipe. So here's the problem with a leaking waste pipe, is that whenever you have just a sink and the sink is leaking, it's no big deal, because the worst thing you're going to have is maybe some toothpaste, a little bit of, dirt from your hands and some soap. And that's fine. But whenever you have a waste pipe further down the line, there are other biological hazards that are inside of that pipe that are now coming out. So in addition to fixing the pipe, you also have to basically sanitize the area around that pipe. If you don't sanitize that area around the pipe, that's less than ideal. And it could lead to somebody, getting sick. If, let's say, we have a subfloor that is completely saturated with urine or fecal matter or whatever it may be, then that subfloor needs to be removed. From a health safety standpoint, it would need to be removed and replaced. And of course, nobody really wants to do that. And so whenever we have a leaking waste pipe, it's much more of a deal than most people make it out to be. And a lot of times you'll hire a plumber, and a plumber will just make the repair, and then that's it, that's all. They don't really give any insight about what needs to happen next. So just be mindful, if it's a waste pipe, it's waste, and you really need to have that area cleaned. So this right here. So when you see corrosion normally means that there is a leak. Now, sometimes that corrosion can then clog that leak and prevent that leak from going any further. And so a lot of the mineral deposits can then fill up that void. However, you don't want to rely on your house not flooding with mineral deposits. So if you see corrosion, you really do want to have that replaced. And this particular valve is an older style valve, which makes sense as to why we'd have that issue. Now, we see this probably in any house that has a gas system, whether that be a gas dryer, a gas range, a gas fireplace, whatever is removed. For whatever reason, people do not properly cap these things, and they think the on-off valve is going to be enough. Just imagine if you bump that with your foot, a kid walks by, turns it on, and your entire house fills up with natural gas. Pretty please. If you are done with gas, you need to cap it, and you need to cap it appropriately to make sure that your house doesn't blow up. That would be so embarrassing to have to explain to your friends that you didn't want to spend 85 cents for a cap, and instead your house blew up. So something to be mindful of. Just pretty pleased to get that stuff taken care of. So structure wall moisture damage. So you're going to see another one of these as well. Basically, whenever there is moisture, then mold will grow. And we're going to get into a little bit deeper of how and why this occurs. Interesting thing about this is that sometimes you will have that, we'll just call it for the sake of conversation, a rim joist. So you have that rim joist and those beams are going into that rim joist. Now that rim joist is on a cold outside exterior of the building. And then this side is on the warm interior. And then what you have is that you have, your regular joists going across, and that's like your floor structure or whatever. Sometimes people, for the sake of insulating, are going to go ahead and put some type of insulation up against that rim joist. Now, the problem is if you put insulation up against that rim joist, a few things can happen. One is pipes that otherwise wouldn't have froze are now freezing. And in addition to that, you're also giving a great opportunity for mold. And the reason why is because you have a cold surface, you have warm air, and what that insulation is doing is basically trapping that water vapor up against that area, and it's not allowing it to circulate with the rest of the air. And so a lot of times people think, well, if I'm going to put insulation up against a rim joist, well, then what people think is that it's going to be the best solution, the best possible thing. And I really have to caution people on using insulation. So if you're going to use insulation, you really have to be mindful of what is the full system, what is actually happening. Am I giving moisture a path to go out? Am I giving the ability for heat to move? Am I going to cause mold-related issues because of that insulation and what it's doing? There's a lot to it, and it's just adding insulation is rarely ever the best option. It could increase the comfort of the home, but it's not always the best option. So just be mindful, especially around exterior surfaces, what's happening, how much airflow there is, where moisture could be trapped, and are you giving, if moisture were to come through, are you giving it a path to continue its way out, or are you trapping it? And if you're trapping it, then you're going to get rot, mold, other things like that. So off of that soapbox, moving on. So the metal roof is damaged. And so basically with a metal roof, it's a pain in the butt because you can't just like go down to the hardware store and get matching metal. You can't go down to the hardware store and get matching color. You can't go down to the hardware store and get the matching, design, size, shape, whatever. You can't do it. If it was shingles, easy repair. Sometimes whenever you have a metal roof that's damaged, it's just a little bit more of a pain in the butt, and you need to repair it because a metal roof is great, except when there's a hole or any kind of damage, because then the metal roof is just at that point completely useless. And metal roofs, a lot of people think, well, I can just add a little bit of caulking or a little bit of, something onto it. But the reality is that that's not going to fix it. There's more work to be done than just adding a little bit of sealant. Now, if you want to add sealant, that will definitely help. But then every year you need to go up on that roof and add the same amount of sealant. And it's just not a good long-term solution. So moving on, take a look at this track right here. This track on this garage door, you can see that it is not quite square. And you can see how far away the track is from the garage. And the reason that's a problem is because now all that weight is now levered onto that one little wheel. And as you can already see, it's starting to fail. And if that wheel were to come out of there, then that garage door would fall down and either break the garage door or break the person underneath it. So what you would do is there are adjustments on the end of the track that connect to the ceiling, and you're just going to move that over ever so slightly. And that way, it will make sure that the wheel is closer to the garage door, that the weight is more evenly distributed in a vertical manner rather than a hinged manner. So just want to make sure we get that taken care of. This right here, somebody had capped some of the plumbing. And on this plumbing ventilation system, I could not tell if these were fully abandoned or not. And so we just want to inquire with the seller, find out why is it that these vents were capped. Now, the thing about vents that people don't really understand or know is that for every plumbing system, whenever water goes down into a sewer line, air has to be able to come also down into there. So same idea, if I had a straw and I put my finger on the straw, so I put it in the water, put my finger on the straw, I can carry that water and the water will not release until I let air into that pipe. So I come over here, grab the water, drop it, good to go. Same thing happens here. Because they put a cap on the end of this vent, it is possible that it's the same as putting your finger over top that straw. water will not go down. And because water will not go down, what you'll end up getting is a gurgling sound. But I did not hear any gurgling with anything inside this house. So it could have very well been an abandoned vent, but I want to know why it was abandoned. And I think that the seller should hopefully know. So the next thing is hardware that people aren't quite aware of. On this particular door, you can see that the door jamb was being struck by the latch. And because of that, we've now damaged the wood. The wood looks terrible. And that's perfectly fine. But basically, we just want an extended strike plate. And so if we take a look at this picture here, with that extended strike plate, they make them in all sizes. This isn't even all the size. I mean, you can get something as custom as you want it to be. But the main idea is that you don't want that metal rubbing up against the wood because it's going to damage that wood. And whenever you unlatch the door, you want it to be able to slide easily metal against metal. Eventually, what will happen here is that you will unlatch the door, and as you open the door, it will get stuck on the wood, and the door won't open until you turn the handle and then continue to pull. And so what we really want is an ease of use. We want to have a good experience when operating a door. So if we get an extended strike plate, that will resolve the issue, no problem. The next thing, obviously nitpicky, but we have a baseboard electric heater, and the cabinet door for underneath the sink is not able to open the entire way. Now, I understand about space constraints and other things that have to go into a consideration of how do you properly make a vanity inside of a really small bathroom. And so for what it is, does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. Could it have been done better? Yeah, it could have been done a lot better. Is it fixable? Not really. What you can do is you can install a smaller door, or you can cut down this door, extend a piece, move the hinges, a whole bunch of work. Honestly, I'll just struggle to reach in there and grab what I need to grab. But it's just one of those things that's kind of an annoyance, and it's not something that is easily remedied. And so it might be something that will stay that way for the life of the house, or until they remodel, just because it's just one of those things that somebody's just not going to take care of. And does it need to be taken care of? No, not really. The majority of things don't need to be taken care of. It'd be nice if they were taken care of, but they don't need to be taken care of. So if we move over here, gutter ice dam. So anytime that there is water, we need to follow that path of water to the very, very final position. And so what happens here is that with all the good intentions, somebody has put heat tape going, on the roof to then fill the gutter with water and so on and so forth. That's great. We used heat tape. We got ice dams. Well, not necessarily remove the ice dams, but we have given water a path to travel so that way the ice dams do not cause the water to go up underneath the shingles. So what this does for us is that now we have water going into a gutter or whatever it may be, and that water has not yet frozen because the heat tape has heated it up enough to move, and now it goes into the gutter. And if the gutter has heat tape, that's great, but you still have the same problem where you have to follow it all the way. This particular gutter did not, and so now the gutter is an entire just wall of ice. And that's obviously bad because it's damaging the gutter. It's damaging the connection of the gutter to the house. It's damaging the siding of the house. And it very well could be allowing water to go up underneath the siding and then into the house, damaging the interior of the house. So we don't want that to happen. The next thing that you'll see, like in this main picture, is that we've had that water then go down, but because the gutter is frozen, the water cannot go any further. And so the water then starts to move onto a walkway, and now we have a slippery walkway. And all of this could have been avoided if we, in this particular house, took heat tape and we took that heat tape even further, either down the gutter, which is what we needed here. And then once we got to the gutter, take it even further so that way it does not come back onto the walkway. So what we want is that if the hillside is sloped towards the house and we put water anywhere along this slope, what will happen is the water will go back to the house. If at one section it is sloped away from the house, then if we put water right here, it'll slope away from the house. And we need to get this water far enough away that the natural slope of the property will take that water away from the house. And that's what we're looking for. So the next thing is this particular house has a failed retaining wall. Now, once you go, I think, above 4 feet, then you need to have a structural engineer. But a lot of people will just backfill a retaining wall with soil. The problem with that is that you get that hydraulic effect where the water is pushing so hard with so much force that it just basically tumbles this wall. And right now, the only reason this wall has not completely failed is because it is now pushing up against a support post for the deck. I don't know if you can, see the foreshadowing on what the issue with this might be, but eventually we can damage the deck. Now that post is supposed to be under compression. And so whenever we're under compression, then that is it just pushing down. By applying a weight to the side of this, we now have a part of this that is under tension, and that is not the way that it is designed to support the deck. So in general, we're damaging the deck. The wall has already failed. Even though the wall has not fallen, the wall has failed. And what really needs to happen is we need to excavate out behind that wall, fill it up with rock or other porous material, make sure water is draining away properly, and then we're good to go. If you've ever been to a large city, or especially New York City, and you see these really large water, big water containers on top of the buildings, they'll have a metal strap around the top, and then you go down a couple feet, they'll have another metal strap. And by the time you get to the bottom, every few inches, they have a metal strap. And that is because that water force is basically exponential, pushing really, really hard. And the same thing has happened here with the retaining wall. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of work to get that retaining wall fixed. But the retaining wall needs to be replaced. It is done. This particular house, funny thing, one, no pest protection to make sure pests don't come in the house. And what you may not be able to see is that this is actually the fan for the microwave that is used as the exhaust vent over top of the range. And the person is like, when I'm cooking, it is so cold, absolutely so cold in that part of the house. And the reason why, there's no backdraft preventer, there's no screen to prevent pests from coming in. And in general terms, all the outside air is coming in unimpeded in through that vent and then down the microwave and then just spilling onto the floor of the kitchen, which is why the kitchen is so uncomfortable to be in. This one here, again, another waste pipe drain. I think we already discussed the biological issues with waste pipe drain leakage, but that's why you need to go into your crawl space at least once a year. Pretty please. If you're a homeowner, go into your house at least once a year. Here's another one. This GFCI tripped at 528 milliseconds. And whenever you get that 528 millisecond trip, that obviously puts you at a great risk of death when being electrocuted. Well, obviously, if you're being electrocuted, you die. Being shocked. When being shocked, if it does not trip within 200 milliseconds, you run the risk of being electrocuted, which is very, very bad. So let's move on. This door here, the lock is inoperable. So here's what you need to know about locks. If you cannot unlock the door from the inside, the lock is wrong. This particular door would not lock or unlock from the inside. The lock was just busted. But if you have to lock or unlock it from the outside, or if you have to use a key on the inside, it is wrong. Imagine yourself, there's a fire. In the middle of the fire, you forgot where you put the key. That's the only way to exit the house. How are you going to exit the house if you cannot unlock that lock from the inside? So this lock just needs to be replaced because it is overall inoperable. But just one of those safety things that if you're ever in a house and it is a keyed lock on both sides, that's a no-no. Cannot have it. So stair handrail assembly inadequate. So when you have stairs from the very top of the stair to the very bottom of the stair, you need to have a graspable handle. And so this right here just gives you some insight of some of the requirements that there may be to make sure that you're doing what needs doing whenever it comes to a stair set. Basically, put yourself in the mindset of yourself at the age of 90 and you're walking down the stairs. Would you like to have something to hold on to if you're 90 years old? And the answer is yes. Right now, does it matter? Probably not. But also, if you're going to rent the property, think about the liability that if you don't have a handrail and somebody falls down your stairs, could you be in trouble? I don't know. But what I'm really getting at is that you just want to make sure there's something that is graspable from the very top of the stairs to the bottom. And it better be able to handle your body weight and handle your body weight in a fall. So just because you may be 150 pounds, if you're falling, just add some extra weight to that. Think that 200 pounds is what we're looking for, and it just makes sure that the handrails are safe and good to go. Window glass damage. So it's easy enough to replace a window pane, but it's not so easy to replace a window if it is a custom stained glass window. Now, there are stained glass artists that will repair this stuff, but you're talking a pretty penny. So whenever you do have custom glass like this, try, if it's possible, to tell the owner, if you really want to keep that piece of glass, that, hey, you broke it, I want it fixed before I buy the house, because you are going to talk about a significant amount of money for the labor to fix these custom stained glass pieces of art. So be mindful of that it is not just a window, it is a piece of art, and therefore it should be treated appropriately as such. So one of those expensive things to fix. Door hardware not present. Whenever you have a pocket door, you need to be able to pull that pocket door out. You should be able to lock it, which would be nice, and then put that pocket door back in. These pocket doors did not have anything. We actually had to grab the very, very top and then pull from the top, like get your finger into the door and pull the door open, and then you could grasp it and move it all the way out. The hardware to install is really not that difficult. any handyman should be able to do that installation. All right, this sewer scope, I have not yet heard back about what the final resolution was on this. Unfortunately, in this particular one, the buyer did not purchase the house because the cost of repair was concerning, or the risk of repair, I should say, was concerning. So what happened is, in this particular pipe, it almost looks like the pipe has cracked, and then the camera went kind of down and then back up. And this seemed like the pipe was displaced. Now, I couldn't verify that it was displaced because there was also a buildup of just sludge and scum and other things like that. So the recommendation was have it jetted, because whenever you're in a plastic pipe, you want to have it jetted, which means a pressure washer cleaning it, as opposed to a rotary cleaner, which spins. Whenever you have a rotary cleaner that spins, you can easily damage plastic pipes. So jetting it would be the best thing. So my recommendation was have it jetted. And then once everything is clean and clear, then have it rescoped. So that way we can verify, is it displaced? Is it just a sag in the pipe? And that would be okay. What's going on? Because realistically, that might be a $10,000 repair because of where it was located, or more, depending. So it's always good to get your house sewer scoped. The thing is, you do not want to be caught off guard with something underneath the house, because if you do buy a house and there's an issue with that sewer line, more than likely it's going to be your responsibility. And we would prefer that you know about that before you go through with the entire purchase of the house. So pretty please, if your house has a sewer line, which is almost every house unless you have septic, make sure that you get that sewer scoped. Will we sewer scope septic? Yes. However, with septic, that's normally on a private property. It's normally a very short run. That's normally something that you can pretty much dig out by hand. No special equipment required most of the time, not always. And the run of pipe is so short that unless there is a tree directly between your house and your septic, which there should not be, most of the time the pipe is just fine. But whenever you have a sewer line, that sewer line can run 200 feet and go under other people's properties, points of entry, underneath the driveways and parking lots. And my gosh, it can get very expensive whenever you have to dig out half of a road, just so that way we can fix one little issue. With a septic, you also have to test the leach field. You also have to test the solids retention tanks. There's a lot to be done that we do not do. But if you have a sewer system, please have it sewer scoped. You just don't want to be caught off guard. And then you might say, okay, well, how much does it cost? Well, if all I did was come out and do a sewer scope, it'd be about $300. All right, so $300. Well, I don't want to pay $300 because what if you don't find an issue? All right, well, if I don't find an issue, you're out $300. But if you don't have a sewer scope done and you do find an issue down the road and you weren't able to get the seller to pay for it or get some kind of concession with the purchase of the home, then best case scenario, $5,000. Easily. Best case scenario, $5,000. Worst case scenario, probably about 40. It's just especially if near your house there is a concrete sidewalk that is maintained or owned by the town or municipality, somewhere in the center of the road is going to be that sewer line. So you will be digging out the asphalt, you will be digging out the concrete, you will be digging out that trench to get back to your house. You'll then have the man-hour, labor hours of doing the repair, all the new material, because you can't just put that old material back in. You have to put in new sand and then new backfill. And then you have to put new concrete. Then you have to put new asphalt pavement. Then you have to repaint the lines for the road. There is so much, and then redo the grass. There's so much to be done. $5,000, sure. $40,000, sure. $300, yes. If I find nothing wrong, for peace of mind, you will be out $300. If we do find something wrong, then you may walk away from the deal because it may not be worthwhile. You may have the seller do the repair on your behalf, or you may get a significant credit to do the repair yourself when it becomes enough of an issue to do so. Just if you have a sewer line, it should be scoped. Oh, well, the HOA. Okay. Then I would just recommend go back and watch our video about the HOA. You are the HOA. You're the one who's paying for the HOA. So if you say, well, the HOA will cover a sewer line maintenance, great. What I want you to do is I want you to take a look at the HOA's treasury. I want you to know exactly how much money is inside of there. I want you to know what their maintenance schedule is and when they plan on replacing roofs, replacing siding, replacing windows, replacing, driveway repavement, all that kind of stuff. Then I want you to take $40,000 for a repair and then tell me how much money is left to do those other things. And will the HOA be asking you for a $5,000, $10,000 boost to the treasury to do an improvement project? Just be mindful. Be very, very mindful if you're buying a house. Sewer scopes always recommended, regardless of if there's an HOA or not. So this house here, there's definitely some increases of moisture. And I think, yeah, so right here we have a shower. The vent in the bathroom is taking that hot, humid air and putting it into the attic. So then we take a look. There's that humidity and the tape is being pulled off of the walls. So, okay, increase of humidity, I got you. I definitely think that this one issue is specific to the humidity that is coming in from that bathroom. That's why the drywall tape is peeling back, 100%. So let's talk about this image here. This image, yes, the drywall tape peeling back, that's the humidity. Why is there so much mold on the sheathing? Because the interesting thing is that on this side, there's a whole bunch of mold and just terribleness. On this side, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so why is that? In this particular case, here's your roof. We have our south-facing side, and the sun is beating down on this roof. There is no snow on here, none at all. Then we look over on this side. There's over 2 feet of snow on this side of the roof. So now we have a very cold surface. And if your grandma ever yelled at you for not using coaster, that's because you have a cold surface making contact with warm, humid air is going to create condensation and it's going to damage her coffee table. Same thing inside of your attic. Because we had a cold surface because of all that snow, and because the sun was beating down on this side and we had all that heat, because of all that heat, that then created a very warm area. And then add a little bit of moisture from that bathroom vent, and then we have condensation all on this side and not at all on this side. All right, so we fixed that vent. We just fixed the issue? No, not even close. On this roof, there were 2 vents that were sticking out. So we had 2 vents that were sticking out of the top of this roof right here. There was no other ventilation. There were no soffit vents. There was no gable vent. There was nothing on this roof that would allow airflow to occur. And so regardless of whether or not we stop that moisture from coming in, there's always going to be humidity inside of there, one way or another. Moisture finds a way. What they needed to do is they need to cut into the bottom and create a soffit vent. If they have that soffit vent, then the air is going to come up and then out those other vents, up and out the vents. And what we want to do is we're circulating that air. There's actually a requirement for how many, for the square footage of that attic is how many square feet of airflow need to be able to come through there. How many cubic feet per minute? Not necessarily, but how much of an opening there needs to be for attic ventilation. So if we are then moving on from here, let's take a look at, so long story short, make sure your attic's ventilated. Sorry, that's the long story short. Ventilate your attic and you won't get mold. Now this mold, real quick, what they had to do was they had to kill all the mold and take care of the wood. Then they had to cut in the soffit vents, and they also had to remove this ventilation right here. Is that the end of the world? No, not at all. Not a big deal. Really not a big deal at all. Like, I know that it seems scary because it's the M word and it's mold, but please, no, like, don't even worry about it. It is something that is easily remedied. And that house, I loved that house. Like, that house backed up onto a wetland, and so nobody's going to build behind you. The views were gorgeous. The house was so well taken care of. Just because there are some issues does not mean that a house is not worthy of your purchase. Just keep that in mind. It was a very nice house. Right here, looks like we had a drip leak in the middle of winter. You do not want to have a drip leak because the ice actually backed all the way up into the pipe. And a lot of people think, okay, the expansion of the water is going to cause the issue. So the expansion of the water, yes, can cause issues. But what it really does is in a closed system, that small expansion of water in that pipe is actually going to create really, really high pressures elsewhere inside your house. So a lot of people think, oh, my pipes froze and that's where it broke. No, you could have an exterior faucet freeze. And because that exterior faucet froze, you could have the faucet in your kitchen just break. Just because of the pressure, could be completely damaged and need replaced. It's very interesting how the hydraulic effect works. But if that ice is expanding, then it is pushing that water elsewhere. And it's pushing that water with so much force. So it's like thousands of PSI that you are actually going to damage something else in your house. It could be where a connector makes a T and then all that pressure pushes it and it pops off. And now all that water, even though that pipe is still frozen, all that water is still running inside your house because that water is not frozen and you now have a flooded house. You really need to be very careful with exterior faucets and also the temperature of your house to make sure that freezing pipes don't damage other parts of your house. So this right here, this plumbing drain, the cast iron pipe was like this. the PVC pipe was like this, and this is how they connected it, not together, just slightly ever so apart. And they used the most basic union that they possibly could have. If waste comes down that pipe and hits that angle, that waste is going to just come down, hit the angle, and it's going to be able to knock that pipe over time completely loose. And then instead of going into the pipe, it's going to go everywhere else in your house. So what do? What's the fix? Oh my gosh, I'm terrified of it. Well, the fix is you buy a $20 coupling. And you can kind of see it on this picture here that instead of having one strap, has two straps to really hold on to things and is a little bit longer. So that way that disconnection in that union where it's not perfectly square, it doesn't matter because that rubber gasket is long enough that it is going to be able to grab the appropriate parts of the pipe and we won't have any issues. So then if we take a look at the crawl space, there were some mouse droppings, there were some pipes. I think that this particular house had a likelihood that with a 100-year flood that water could come into the crawl space. So they did all these things to make sure that the water will then exit the crawl space at the end of that 100-year flood event. And because of that, I think that crawl space was amazing. That crawl space was very, very good. But if there's a will, there's a way. And I'm curious if these mice are finding a path into the house through these pipes. And would it make sense to put a little screen on the pipes to prevent that from occurring? It's just what it looked like. I cannot verify that without putting a camera down that pipe. But in general terms, I think that was what was going on. So we just want to make sure that we're preventing, rodents from coming into the house. This furnace here, somebody had spilled some kind of liquid on this furnace, and it was so tacky and so sticky that the cover of the furnace just would not come off, had to be cut with a razor blade and then pulled out. It was almost as if somebody just like placed taffy on there or something, and it just got onto everything. The furnace operated properly, but I'll tell you, I would really prefer if somebody came out, cleaned it, and then gave it a full overview, servicing, cleaning, whatever needs doing to make sure that it's functioning 100%. But it was working just fine. It's just that liquid, anytime you put liquid near components like this, it just, concerns me. I'm guessing that you can guess that this is probably not the way that you should fix things. This should be a slip joint. This should be something you can easily repair, replace. It almost looks like they use JB Weld or something else. And you can also see that we have some seepage coming through that JB Weld. So the repair did not work. There are better ways of doing just about everything that you see whenever somebody repairs something themselves. But this is wholly inadequate. What will happen is any kind of movement, twisting, pressure, whatever, and we're going to crack that rigid seal that they made. They should have done it a million different other ways, but I just want to make sure that stuff like that is repaired because otherwise it's going to be very expensive. Another thing that should have been done better is all of this electrical. It would have been very nice if it was organized a little bit better. It would have been very nice if it was adequately secured. It would have been very nice if things were just done differently. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. But does this show that we hired, when building this house, the most professional electrician or the cheapest electrician? And this, without a doubt, is somebody who hired a very inexpensive electrician to do electrical work and not make it neat and pretty, not keep it organized, not keep it properly secured. Every, 4.5 feet, you have to secure the wires. The entire span, none of them were secured for 15 feet, all the way back. This picture doesn't even show you how far this went. And the problem with that is that wires can get snagged, stepped on, damaged, kinked, crimped. A million different things could happen. We want to be in control of where the wires go. We don't want the wires to control our lives, I guess, is what it comes down to. Speaking of which, electrical service panels. Stop trying to kill your inspector. That's all I got to say about that. Stop trying to kill us. Or yourself. But screws that have a sharp point are going to find their way into a piece of wire and become electrified. And that box is going to become electrified. And then I'm going to touch that box to do my job. And I'm going to get knocked back on my butt because I just got shocked. Hopefully not electrocuted. Hopefully just shocked. What you need, just like you can see in this, are fine thread, blunt-nosed screws that are specific to your circuit panel, your service panel. So what you really need to do is just replace those other things, have somebody make sure the wires are not damaged, and put in the proper screws, because you may have been lucky that the wire moved out of the way, but the next time the wire may not move out of the way, and now you'll have an electrified panel. And if you didn't get knocked on your butt installing it, you're definitely going to get knocked on your butt trying to take it apart. So just be very careful with what you put into an electrical panel. All right, if the door is damaged, the door is probably going to need replaced. Now, this is a hollow core wood door. This is about as cheap as it gets. Can you replace just the door without replacing the whole door jamb? The answer is yes. You'll have to get a couple measurements. It's not that expensive of a piece to be able to do so. Maybe $100. But then if you've ever hung a door, I personally hate hanging doors. Unless you can get a 1-for-1 match, it's kind of a pain to install doors. But whenever a door is damaged like this, there's really not much repair that can be done that's viable, and the door will have to be replaced most of the time. But again, that particular door is a hollow core wood door, so no big deal. This house very much surprised me. Every single tile in the kitchen, every single tile was cracked. There was not a single tile that was not cracked. And so, well, obviously it was installed incorrectly, or somebody just had a huge dance party. But whenever you put that tile down, you have your subfloor. And then what you're going to do is you're going to mix up your mortar. You're going to get everything, all mixed and ready to go. Then you lay that down, and then you put the tile on top. There's a certain amount of thickness of that material that has to be put down. It's a very specific mix, very specific thickness. And if it's not uniform and if it's not adequately thick enough, then what will happen is that you'll have tiles where there could be a void. And whenever you put that tile on there, the tile will flex into that void. And if you know anything about tile doesn't flex. Therefore, it breaks and cracks. Overall, this is an inadequate installation, completely incorrect installation of tile. And if you were within, the time period of whoever installed it, all of this tile should have been replaced under warranty, because all of this appears to have been installed completely incorrectly. So just something to be mindful of, that if you see cracked tile, it's normally because of a bad installation. So these balusters, let's see if I have how far apart they were. They were not listed, but basically you can't have a baluster that's wider than 4 inches wide, because you don't want a kid falling through it. This particular baluster was definitely more than that. I want to say it was like 10 inches wide in between these. And I mean, most anything or anyone could fall down through that onto the stairs, and we just don't want kids to get hurt. So even though it's not required, the thing is, your house is grandfathered in that you don't have to do various safety things. So since you don't have to do these safety things because you're grandfathered in, you don't have to do them because you're grandfathered in. That's great. Except that the reason that these new safety rules exist is because enough people have gotten hurt or died. And now enough people have gotten hurt or died that they've said, okay, we're going to have to do something about this. From now on, this is the safety standard. So yes, you're grandfathered in, and no, you don't have to make any of these changes. However, the reason that they're there is to protect life. And if you don't want to protect life, then don't fix the balusters. If you do want to protect life, then fix the balusters. Because if something or someone falls through there, it could definitely hurt them very, very badly. And then you say, okay, well, I don't have any kids. Okay, great. Do you have any pets? I don't have any pets. Okay, whatever. If you have something next to that stair and you're walking up the stair and something causes it to fall over or whatever and go through those balusters, do you really want a 10-inch wide object falling right at your head? Let's talk about that then. So it's not just, will a kid fall through it? Will a pet fall through it? It's, will an object that's large enough to cause serious bodily injury, will that fall through it? Could it fall through it? And what are the odds? Like none. The odds are very, very low that you'd ever have an issue. But if it did happen, is replacing the balusters worth preventing that from happening? It's a risk versus reward. It's just something you have to decide on your own. So whenever we do an inspection report and we put something in as red and we say that it is an issue that needs to be resolved, you don't have to resolve it, but we definitely recommend that you do, because you just want to make sure people are safe inside of your house, because at the end of the day, you might be held liable. Just throwing that out there. Be safe. Next, leaks inside the ceiling. So this particular house had multiple leaks inside the ceiling. You could not see this leak without a thermal camera. That was, and the one above the mirror in the next picture could not see any discoloration, nothing wrong with the ceiling, nothing wrong with the wall, just nothing on those two examples. And if it were not for the thermal camera, which we do on every inspection, we would just never have found it. So sometimes you'll see a dark spot and you're like, that really looks like something that needs to be addressed. And so whenever that is the case, Then we put our moisture meter into it. And then what that tells us is if there is or is not moisture. And in this case, or these cases, there was moisture. And thankfully, we were able to find it and we we're good to go. I always advocate and I tell people, pretty please, make sure that you have enough protection and coverage so that way pests don't get into your dryer vents. And look at this. A bird has made themselves a wonderful nest inside of a nice warm pipe to keep their eggs extra happy. So one of these things is just a plastic little grate that goes over top of that. Because my concern is how much bird poop is in there. How many other biological issues could there be inside of there? How deep into the pipe did the bird go? Because I've had things where I've had a bird travel almost 20 feet into a house and fall down into a furnace and on an air intake vent. So like the bird died of starvation, unfortunately. And that's why, again, I advocate that people always cover their penetrations to help protect our wildlife. And in this case, a bird clearly made a home, but how much poop and how many other issues are there from here all the way to the dryer vent? And how likely is it that your house will catch on fire if any of that dried grass or dryer lint catches fire? That obviously would be a very, very bad thing. So we just want to get that cleaned out and be good to go. This right here, the fire barrier door. So the hinges, they cost a couple dollars. Remember we talked about risk versus reward. If it's predictable, it's preventable. If we can predict that there could be carbon monoxide gas inside of a garage, if we can predict that there could be a fire inside the garage that we don't want to enter the house, then it's preventable. Buy $15 worth of hinges and have that door automatically shut so that way you and your family stay safe. Easy peasy. Attic insulation. So this goes back to the issues that we were talking about with mold and other things like that. So the vapor barrier was damaged and not really doing what it was supposed to do. But in general, do I advocate that you repair the vapor barrier? Not necessarily, because if that vapor barrier is then repaired and made airtight, maybe it should never have been there in the first place. Maybe it was installed incorrectly. Maybe there are other issues that are, if you were to put up the vapor barrier, that we could no longer have that vapor, that water drying out of the walls, and it may be stuck in the walls now. So I don't know. I'm torn because if I make the vapor barrier airtight like the way it was supposed to be whenever it was first installed, I could be causing more issues because right now, if I have no issues, maybe there's no issue to worry about if I just leave it the way that it is. Or do I want to make it completely airtight again? I'm going to leave that one to you guys and your internet research. But in general terms, if there are no issues, why fix something that isn't broken? And yes, the vapor barrier looks ugly, but really in this particular place, there were no issues. There's the one picture in the bottom right corner closest to me here that shows that there was a little bit of water that was dripping. And if you look, there was a vapor barrier where the two seams kind of came together. And so what you had one vapor barrier and then the other like this, and the water came down this vapor barrier and then was dripping onto the wall. So why do we have vapor trapped in between a wall cavity that has no ventilation? How is that a good idea? It's not a good idea. And so that's, again, why I'm a little bit skeptical of if I actually want to fully tighten up the water and air proofness of that particular room. I just, I don't feel good about it. So if your ladder for accessing an attic does not land completely straight with weight on it, then it's no good. And this particular ladder, the legs were probably 5 or 6 inches too long. And so you see the ladder is just not quite perfect. We drew a straight line with that blue there to show how out of square this particular ladder is. The problem is that by not having a ladder adequately putting the weight on the legs and the rungs, then we are putting it into the hinges, and those hinges are liable to fail. And if they did fail, you're going to have a bad time. So this particular ladder, I think at minimum, they need to cut at least 5 inches off of the bottom legs. Not a big deal. Easy thing to do. Take a little piece by piece, step on the ladder, get a straight edge, make sure the ladder is doing what it's supposed to do. Just easy fix if you are a handy person, or if you know somebody that can easily just, cut some wood for you. You don't have to have power tools. You can do it with a hand tool. No problem. Temperature pressure relief valves. So I think we talked about this, 210 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 PSI. If it comes out above 6 inches off the ground, there's a risk that you could be very, very injured by that extreme water temperature and pressure. We just want to make sure that our temperature pressure relief valves go to exactly where they need to go to. Inside of this attic, which you might notice is the same attic as the other one with the vapor barrier, we had a light bulb that did not have a cover on it. Now, the cover could be just as simple as a plastic cover that goes over top to protect the light bulb, but they had so much stuff up there that if you were to bump that light with, like, for instance, you can see a metal bicycle or some ski poles or skis. If you were to bump that light and break the glass, and we all know how easy glass is to break, then those electrical wires are now exposed. And if you're holding a metal bike that broke it, you're getting electrocuted at this point, because your grip will tense and you will not be able to let go of that bicycle. So just, if you got $3, just put that $3 onto that light, make it safe, especially if you're going to store products up there. So hot and neutral reversed. So if the hot and neutral are reversed, that's a bad thing. And the reason this is a bad thing is because there is the possibility that whenever you plug in that appliance, that we have now made it unsafe to work on electricity inside the house, because now we have an inverted loop. And with that inverted loop, you could turn off something at the circuit breaker and not actually have it be turned off the way that you thought, which is why you always need to test for voltage before you start working on electricity to make sure that all the wires that you think are dead are actually dead. In addition to this, by having the hot and neutral reversed, a lot of metal appliances such as toasters, washing machines, other things like that, they basically will both ground the chassis, the metal part, and the ground, just so you know, actually is on the neutral leg. And so depending on how the electricity was run and with the hot and neutral being reversed, you could potentially electrify an appliance such as a washing machine or a toaster that whenever you touch it, you get shocked. Not something that we want. So I would highly recommend that get fixed, which again, health safety issue. That's why it's in red. So stair risers, not uniform. So this will never get fixed, ever. I don't see any way that somebody could potentially fix this without running into multiple issues. You basically have to remove the entire set of stairs and then just try again. Whoever did their measurements was off, was grossly off. I don't remember exactly what this stair was. I don't think that I wrote it down in here, but there were other pictures that would have the tape measure and whatnot, but I think it was like 4 inches. So the one stair was like 7 3/4 inch. And then this one little stair was about 4 inches. So from a tripping hazard standpoint, definitely not ideal. But basically, whenever you have stairs, you have to take what is the final height of the structure, like where the second floor is, and what is the lowest part of that you're going to land on of your final landing. And then you have to divide that by the number of stairs you want to put in. And then that gives you your rise over run, and you're good to go. Somebody messed up the measurements, and now we have this that will never be resolved, never be fixed. At this point, it's just a for your information kind of thing, because there really is no way to modify or fix that. So the expansion tank here made a bunch of noise. There's a couple reasons why that could have happened, but more than likely, it's probably a bad expansion bladder inside the expansion tank, and that could be causing the really, really bad noise. But it was like a screeching banshee anytime that you ran the water inside of this house. That is definitely something that needs to be resolved, because if you could imagine somebody needs a glass of water in the middle of the night and they fill up a little bit of water and all you hear is this shrieking noise, you're not going to sleep very well, in addition to many other things. So I would just highly recommend that that expansion tank be taken care of. So we're pretty much at the end then right here. And I guess what I'd want to say is that we have a lot of issues that we find, and our job is to find issues. And the majority of the issues are all very easily resolvable, because again, keep in mind that every house is built by a person, so therefore every house can be fixed by a person. The difference is how much does it cost to do the repair, so on and so forth. Then also there is, what is your risk aversion? How perfect do you want your house to be? And what is reasonable? Because I don't think that it's reasonable that somebody fix everything that we find, because there are some issues that we find that really don't matter. So then why do we even comment on it? Well, the reason we comment on it is because even though it may not matter from like a health, safety, or, oh my gosh, the building's going to collapse standpoint, but they matter because it's a comfort issue. It is something that perhaps will take your time or take your money to be able to repair it or make it the way that it should, to make it whole again. Sometimes with that kind of stuff, it's just, we want to make sure that whenever you go into a house that you are comfortable in the house that you move into. And it's possible that I could walk through just about any house and say, nope, no issues here, passes the home inspection. But what am I really doing for you guys? what are our inspectors doing if all we do is go in and say it's not falling in on itself, the roof is not collapsed, and there's no flooding inside the house? Okay, great. But what about this door that doesn't latch and is really annoying? What about this window that doesn't open properly? What about, all the holes in the wall because it was a rental? So that's why we go through this type of stuff. And even though it may not be the most interesting, it's still something that we make sure that we do, because yeah, you may not care that somebody once hung a picture frame here and now there's a hole in your wall. But if you are the type of person that wants there not to be a hole in the wall, that might just be something you want to know before you purchase the house. Not that that's going to affect your decision to buy the house or not buy the house, but why not know everything that you can about the condition of the house? I think that is the value that we add, without a doubt. So anyway, these trainings, again, mostly intended for my employees. But overall, what I would say is that you as a homeowner or you as a passive observer, I would recommend that you take a look at this stuff and kind of make a scale in your own mind of, is this something that matters to me, or is this something that doesn't matter to me? I mean, let's just take this step right here, for instance. This particular step, if you're used to your house, you know that the last step is a little bit small. But if you have elderly parents that come over to your house frequently, do we want to make sure that every step is the same, so that way as they get into the rhythm of walking up the stairs, there's no risk of a trip or fall? Because a trip or fall could be very, very dangerous for a person above a certain age, much more so than, even a small kid who kind of seem to bounce back from just about anything. So take everything, with a grain of salt, decide what is important to you and what is not important to you. And in general, don't fret the small stuff. I mean, there's really no reason to worry about the majority of even the things that we went over here. We just pick them out because we think that they're interesting. But if you do have an inspection and you're not sure about something, we see hundreds of houses a year, hundreds. And so you can come to us and say, well, is this normal? Do you see this often? And if I say, I've never seen this before in my entire life, that's a problem. That would be something that I would definitely take an extra couple seconds and just say, do I really want to deal with that? But if we come back to you and we say, oh yeah, without a doubt, we see this probably in 10 out of 10 houses, 8 out of 10 houses, whatever, then the thing for you to keep in mind is, okay, this is normal, but it's not like you're going to find a better house that doesn't necessarily have this issue. Like here's an example. Almost every house does not have door stops for its doors and has holes in the wall where the door handle has struck. That's a very easy and nitpicky kind of example. But if you as an individual, and think of this as anything that matters to you, but if you as an individual said, my deal breaker is a house that has a hole where the handle of a door struck the wall because there was no door stop, you can come to us and say, well, do you see this often? I say, I see this in every single house. And so that can kind of retrain yourself to understand that every house is going to have that issue, or like 99% of the houses are going to have that issue on at least one door. So maybe I can check myself and understand that these issues, although it's not something I like or something I'm comfortable with, the majority of houses are going to have this as an issue. And so other than this one issue, am I comfortable with the house? And the majority of the time, the answer is yes. So yeah, that basically sums up this January 2021 in-service training. So I just would advise you that if you have any questions, or if you'd like to schedule a home inspection, to please just visit 2moosehomeinspections.com, and also have a wonderful day.